firstly, I'm going to ask some questions about before you came to live here. What do you remember about your family relationships and early childhood memories when you lived in Barbados?
It was beautiful. I think at that time, people in the West Indies thought that they were poor, in economic terms. But coming to England made me realize we weren't poor at all. Even if we were poor in economic terms, we were rich in family traditions and caring in the community. I remember my mom and dad died while I was a little girl, and she left 8 of us. And everyone in the community people took 2, some took 3. We never had an adoption system, but it was part of like goodwill, because in communities, or what we call villages in Barbados, you always had people of goodwill. Like how you have your social workers here, where we have people of goodwill. And they all joined together, my aunties and extended family, and took care of the family. However, in 1960, my elder sister came over, and I was very attached to her. And I followed her in 61, 13th of March, 1961.
Came over to England?
Mm-hmm.
And do you have any specific memories of a childhood? Was it a happy childhood?
Yeah, all childhoods are happy, as long as you're not abused. I mean, in the West Indies, what could be happier? They're running across the fields, tying your goats out, having your chickens. You have your sun come up from 6:30 in the morning, and then you have the moonlight come up from about 9 o'clock till 11 or 1 o'clock in the night. What could be happier? In those terms, because we weren't affluent at the time, because as in English terms, you would call it the third world country, or newly developed countries. We weren't as affluent as England. But then on the other hand, when I came to understand the English society, this society wasn't affluent either. Hadn't just come along, because I realized in the 1930s and the 1920s, people walk about barefooted, they were beraggled in much the same way that you would have seen in the early 50s or 40s in Barbados. So.
And you said that your parents had 8 children?
Yes, yeah. They did.
And where were you?
7th.
You were the 7th?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you remember, did you go to school in Barbados?
Of course I went to school, yes, secondary school. We went from infants to secondary, infants, primary. It's the same. You must realize in Barbados, you always hear it's referred to as Little England, because, being over here and going back on say in the last 10 years I've been going back every year, I found out that Barbadians at times seem to be more English than the English themselves, because they still have afternoon teas at 3:30. So it was not much different. It was very, very English controlled, Barbados, so it wasn't much different.
And what were your experiences of religion living in Barbados? Did you have a religious upbringing?
Of course you have to. It's part of the stability of our country. The same way as in education. I mean, if you go to Barbados, 100% of people, say 98% of people go to church, and much the same way that 98% of people in Barbados are educated. So it's a stability. I went to the Pilgrim Holiness Church, and we had to go to church twice on a Sundays and every night, and sometimes sometimes at night, you go and you sit, say from 7 o'clock, church finish at 11, and you'll be tired as a little girl, you try to doze off, and then the grandma or the auntie will poke you like that. You had to wait up and see it through. And when I was 11, I was baptized, in the Christian faith. That was it.
And would you say you had a strict upbringing?
Not really strict. We just adhered to what, the ethics and the values that you have within the home. And if you didn't, you get a good hiding, and that was it. It was part and parcel of life.
Okay. And did you have a job when you were in Barbados?
No. I was only 16 when I came here. I came out of school and came to Barbados. Came from Barbados over here.
Okay. So if we move on to your process of migration, what were your reasons? You said your sister came here.
Yeah, my elder sister, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then you decided to follow on.
Yeah, they sent me over because I was the younger, apart from my other sister Lydia. She died at 38, But I followed my other sister over.
And were your family living in Wolverhampton at the time, were they?
Yes.
Yeah. So you came
Straight here.
And how did you come by boat or on?
Yeah, we came by the SS Oriental. It took us 6 weeks to get here.
6 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can always boast that I've had a cruise. Oh dear.
And did you come alone when you came?
Yes, I did. Very adventurous young lady I was. Mm. You see, some aspects of West Indian life is a matter of fact that we wouldn't say that we know no fear. We're adventurous in the sense that you find you've got a lot of people who've emigrated to America, you've got emigration to Canada, but I think with black people, you always go for a better life, you know, and I think sometimes in the interim, if we had sat down and think, well, you know, we could have developed in much the same way. If we had stayed at home, we would have been a lot happier. We would have been developing much the same way as those brothers and sisters we left at home. But, you know, we always think, well, we want it now, you know, the now society.
What do you remember of the journey coming over here?
A lot of people were ill, but a lot of people took care of each other, you know, the seasickness and what have you. And the food was, I never liked the smell of cabbage until that was awful. And I think I was sick for a couple of days, but there was a nice lady from St. Vincent, and I always think of her. I never got her name, you know, who took care of me in the sense that, you know, she brought soups and made tea and what have you for me while I was laid up in the cabin.
Okay, and when you arrived here, what were your first impressions?
It was awful. I looked around and I saw on the 13th of March, there was like mist, you know, and I thought, what's going on? I said, what's all the smoke? And my sister said, it's not smoke, it's the way the country is. And she had on this big dark coat. And I says, what are you wearing that big jacket for? She says, you got to keep warm. Because in those days, in the 60s, the style was, you know, crinoline. I used to have a crinoline. I used to have what you call a wire waist. My waist was about 22 inch, and I had a nice bum, you know, and nice chest and everything else. And that was a theme, and that's how I came over. You know, we weren't told to bring a jacket or anything. I was freezing. And I had, in those days, we were wearing the pillbox hat, the same way the English wore them in the 40s and 50s, you know, the pillbox hat. But it was very daunting, to be honest, when I came and I saw everything. But the greatest shock of all was when I saw white folks, when I was going home in the car, and I saw white dustmen. And I saw white folks sweeping the streets. And I said to my sister, I said, what's happening? She says, they work the same as we do. Because in the West Indies, you were taught to believe, because there was no television, there was no communication, only what you read, you know, in the Advocate, the newspaper, what have you. And we always put white folks up on pedestal. You know, we were taught to believe that they were better than us. You know, and over there you have rich white folks, you have poor white folks. But it was always the status quo is the white people come away from America, even some white Barbadians, and then you have a servant or two to take care of the children. And I remembered my brother, he was a butler. He was one of the finest butlers in Barbados. And he used to wash the clothes as well. You know, he used to wash the family clothes, cook the food. He knew everything about that family. You know, it's only after I grew up and came here and I look at it in context. And I thought to myself, well, white folks can't really say anything about us, you know, in the West Indies, because we took care of you. You understand? Even although it was for pittance. But nevertheless, you know, we took care of leaders. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. We took care of leaders. We took care of the household. We took care of the husband drawers, their knickers, everything, you know, so.
Were you pleased at that time that you'd come, or did you wish you'd have stopped?
No, I'm pleased, even now looking back, I'm pleased of the experience, you know, because it broke that veil from my eyes, you know, to make me know, well, you know, there's no difference. You know, and to be honest, the only time I learned of racism is when I came into this country. Because in Barbados, you were either poor black, middle-class black, rich black, poor white, middle-class white. We intermarried, we fought, you know, white folks and black folks in Asia. There was no difference, you know. The only thing we knew that we had to go into town to get shopping and, you know, the big stores and what have you. But I mean, that's how it was.
Okay, so moving on to when you were actually settled living in Wolverhampton, did you start work more or less straight away?
No, I didn't. I think I stayed at home for about a good 9 months or so, you know, and we lived in rooms, you know, a big room, and I think it was about 3 or 4 family, but the houses were quite large at the time, you know, and family lives together. So, and my first job was doing this hand press work. It was some sort of machine that you put things in and then you spun around and knocked me out. You have to spin it around and then catch it and then spin it back again, but you had to get the knack of it. I didn't get the knack of it, and that was at Die Castings in Wolverhampton. But then I progressed from there, and I got married, and I had my children. Then I went into nursing. I started as an auxiliary nurse at first at Burton Road Hospital. And then in '69, I decided to go into nursing. And I said how controlled, and I wouldn't say stupid, but we were afraid to challenge the status quo at the time. You know, I said to Matron, Matron, I'd like to do my SRN. And he says, oh, Nurse Bennett, no. You've got your young family growing up, your 3 children. It'll be too hard for you to do that. She says, I suggest you go on the SEN course. You know, it takes only 2 years. And, you know, you're a very good nurse. And, you know, I went home and I thought about it. And, you know, I thought, well, she was right. And I did that. And then when it came to realization, I thought, but wait. But the matter of fact is, I passed the exam in 18 months instead of 2 years. You know, I thought, what the bloody hell this woman have done to me? And, you know, telling me that I couldn't do it. Anyway, I stayed into nursing until 1977. And I remembered my daughter Pauline, she had chicken pox. And I said to the matron at the time, I says, Matron, I says, my daughter isn't very well and I need a couple of weeks off to look after her. She says to me, how dare you, Nurse Bennett? She says, you will not tell me when you can have your time off. I will tell you when you will have your time off. And she flounced out of the room. And I went back down the ward. And I thought, well, after all, I said, she shouldn't speak to me like that, you know, within my heart. And I thought, what the bloody hell you think you are? You know, so I went right back up in the ward. I says, I call her by name. And I says, Matron, may I have a word with you? She says, yes, Nurse Bennett, but if it's regarding having time off, my words stand. So she came into the office and I backed the door so she couldn't get out. And to be honest, I told her straight. I says, listen, I says, my daughter's sick at home. And I says, I'm having the time off. She says, I've already told you, Nurse Bennett. I said, well, let me tell you something. I says, look around this ward. Do you see any of these patients look like me? She says, what do you mean? I says, exactly what I've asked you. I said, but this is the last time I've worked in your establishment. And I took the apron off. I took the cap off. And it was a September. And that September, it was a Friday evening. And I remember I enrolled for Bilston College on the September, the morning. And I went to Bilston College for a year. And within that year, I did 4 O-levels and 2 A-levels. And from that time, I went on to the Polytechnic. And I did 2 years diploma higher education. And I thought, good morning. Yeah. And I did, the 3rd year I did my degree.
And what was your degree in?
Social sciences.
Social sciences.
And at the same time I was working to support the family nights as well as a nurse. Yes, because, you know, to eke the budget out. Yeah. So I can't say, well, my time in Wolverhampton, it wasn't wasted. It was certainly colourful. You know, it wasn't wasted, it was colourful. But on the other hand, as I said, if things were different, I would have preferred to stay in my own country. Even now, I yearn. You know, when you yearn for home, when I go home for 4 weeks in a year. And I retrace the steps that I never walked. You know, I retrace steps that I never walked. When I say retrace the steps, like within that short time, I said 16 years I've been in Barbados, I walked in some places, but when I start going back, those places have changed.
Yeah.
So I retraced those steps and walked the path that I didn't walk before,
Yeah.
you know, which I enjoy immensely. And to be at home for those 4 weeks and to be with my people when I don't feel an alien, you know, I don't feel that people are discriminating against me. You know, I have a feeling of freedom and acceptance. In England, I don't, even although I've been here for 38 years. Because working now, you know, even although I've got my degree, after doing that, I went and I got a certificate in health education. You know, I taught mental health at the Poly. I taught at Bilston College. I'm not a person, you know, I like to stay in the background and I like to do things, you know, I like to do them properly, and I like to say, well, in my heart, I have achieved this, not only for me, but for others. Yeah. And I think in this job, and within that context, you know, I feel quite satisfied. But on the side of racism, you know, people might say to me, well, or we might discuss and say, well, it's abating. But I wouldn't say it's abating. It's gone underground, on a different cover, and I think it's undercurrent racism. You know, in the sense within schools you have quite a lot of expulsion of children, and I feel that teachers especially, I know they're overworked, but the status quo is such, is, you know, what I say go. And sometimes I feel that when children are misbehaving, you know, within schools, and you've got a white control environment for black children, I feel that teachers and authorities should look a little beyond that, not continue to look at the families and say, well, it is the family. They need to look within themselves, you know, and see what traits they hold within. You must realize that if I speak to you in the way that I'll speak to my daughter, you know, in a cultural way, I don't think you'll take too kindly to it, you know. And teachers must realize that, you know, that the way that they speak to children, you can't speak to all children that way, especially children of different cultural backgrounds, because it's misinterpreted. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I feel sometimes that people should look beyond or underneath, you know, these things before rising to issues to say, okay, well, you've been rude, you're excluded from school. I mean, for instance, in parallel with Barbados, you go to school and you're rude to the teacher, or you haven't done your work. You've got the wider community to answer to, because the teacher, they know all your parents, they know the family, you know, and you'll be taken to task for that. Over here, that's not the same. You know, you only know about when the children are getting into trouble, or when it's become such a focus that you can do nothing at all about it.
So you mentioned aspects of racism. Do you think it doesn't happen so often now as it did when you first came, or have you seen any difference, or do you think it's still the same as it was when you first came here?
I can't go out and say that Britain is a racist society. You understand what I'm saying? Because on the other hand, you can contradict yourself in saying that, because when there are disasters, say in what we call in third world countries, you'd be surprised to see the amount of money that English folks will send abroad. You understand? Yeah. So this is my theory, you know, well, if English folks were really racist, would they be moved by their heart to send money to people away? You know, that's how I think. But I feel that the status quo, this old colonial status quo, I feel that people want to keep it alive. You know, say, well, you know, we're your betters. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. Yes, and they go back, because when a dog is wounded, he goes back to his own lair, on his own floorboards. So they go back to their own ways of understanding the world it is. But they have to change. You know, there have to be a change. You can't hold on to your racist to racist ways or behaviors forever. Something will have to change.
Okay. When you first came to live here, you mentioned you lived in, is it just rooms, was it?
Yeah, you rented rooms for £2.50 a week or £2, 50 shillings. That was the old money. Yeah, £2.50.
And how many of you lived in the room?
Sometimes it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of us.
5 of you?
Yes. But you contain yourself. As I say, it's no different. It wasn't any different than in the 30s and the 40s when white folks had to do exactly the same. You know, so, you know, we're just picking up on what you all threw away 20 years ago.
Okay, and you say you had children. You had
Yes,
3
I've got.
children, did you?
No, I've got 4 children.
4 children?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've got 4 children.
How
Yeah.
have they found it, like with education, and how have they done?
Well, I would say they did quite well. No. But I say especially my daughter, she went to all white girls grammar school, and I had to do what a mother had to do to protect my daughter, in the sense that I had to speak out for her. I never went to the teachers because they used to write notes and call her black pig and gollywog and why don't you go swing in the trees. And I realized she was being withdrawn. When she came from school, she always ran upstairs to her room. I said, what are you going upstairs for? She said, I just want to do some writing, Mum. And one day I went into the room and there was these piles of notes. And I thought, well, I says, I'll see these children. I said, go see the teacher. She says, no, Mum, because if you saw the teacher, it'll make it worse for me. I said, well, Pippi, I have to do something about it. I just can't let you suffer like this. So I says, okay, then I shan't do anything. But like a good old mother, I asked her the name of the children, and she told me. And I went down there to the school about 8:30 in the morning, and I asked the other kids, I said, do you know so-and-so? And so I said, yes. So I said, point her out to me when she came. And I got all of them together. And I says, I'm Pauline's mum. And I said, you've been calling her names and telling she's a gollywog and this. I says, why are you doing this? They said, we don't like her because she's the only black one in the school. So I says, okay. I says, this is your blouse, because they're wearing nice navy and white. I said, this blouse is white, isn't it? She says, yes. I says, what's the color of your skin? She says, pinky, sort of a pink. I says, okay. I said, have you got a cat at home? She said, yes. I said, have you got a dog? She says, yes. I said, when you go home, you take your hand and you pull away the hair of the dog's skin and the cat, and that's the color of your skin. I says, you say her hair is woolly like a gollywog. I says, have you seen the horse's hair? She says, yes, the tail. I says, that's what your hair is like. And I said, you see, she's got a nose, a big flat black nose. I said, have you seen the foul beak? She says, yes. I said, that's what your nose is like. But in a sense, you know, people might say I was racist in doing that to children. But I did that to make people realize, you know, you can always find something about someone that will make them feel bad. You know, and I've always taught my children to be very proud of their color. You know, it can be diluted, but it can't be taken away. You know, I said, her hair, which you say is woolly, I said, it's like the sheep's hair. I said, you feel mine. And you know, when Pauline had her 21st birthday, 2 of the girls came, and she says, Mrs. Bennett, I thank you very much for that lesson you gave us, because we've taught our children the same.
Good.
You see?
Yeah.
So you have to be, you know, you have to be. It's not a matter of fact that, you know, someone going to come and say tell my children, oh, he called me a black bastard. I says, black you are, but a bastard you're not. Mm-hmm. You know, I says, don't be afraid of being black. I says, that's the color. It's no big deal. And I says, who knows whether the color is black or white? It is just a name that people have made up.
Yeah. And have you still carried on your religious upbringing since you've come to live in England?
Yes,
you
yes.
still go to church
Yeah.
regularly?
Going to church is one thing, but trying to be a Christian is a different thing. Everybody go to church. I try to be a Christian.
Yeah.
You know, try very hard indeed. You know, turn the other cheek sometime, but not too far.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you and your family enjoy doing in your spare time in Wolverhampton?
All my family are grown up. They're all married and I've got 6 grandchildren now.
Have you?
Yes, but I read a lot. I write a lot. The little girl, the last one, let's say we're companions in the sense that we do quite a lot of things together. You know, she like her dances, but I like solitude now. You know, I've done it all. You know, the only thing I haven't done is like smoke and drink. But I've seen quite a bit of the world in the sense that, you know, the job that I was doing prior to this, I traveled a lot, you know, with Donald, you know, to other countries. And
so you worked with Donald, did you?
yes, you know, before he's gotten old.
Yeah. So there's a point on here about achievements, but you've already said you've achieved a lot since you've been here with your degree. And
yeah, I've achieved. It's been hard, but it's been quite rewarding, you know. And but the only drawbacks, and a lot of black people will tell you this because we talk, and as women we talk, you know, it's a recognition within the institutions. You know, I mean, for instance, if you're on, sometimes you sit on committees, and you might say something in a question is asked, you ask the question, and you put it in your cultural way, you understand? And it's bypassed. And then you find a white folk will take it up and relate to the panel or to the all-white panel, what is it they're on about, and it's taken on board. And you know, things like that pisses me off. It's, oh, sorry. Yes, yeah, you know, it really gets to you. Yeah. You know, it's the recognition and acknowledgement that you've done something well. You know, I feel if, in a sense, if white folks could just let go of this thing of trying to be always superior and always trying to say, you know, I've done this, and let people, give other people a chance, I think the world would be a lot easier. Yeah.
And how would you think your life would have been different if you'd have stopped in Jamaica?
I wasn't in Jamaica, Barbados.
Barbados.
Well, I don't know, because I couldn't see into the future. But I think I would have still gotten married, would have still been quite a bit feisty when I was young. Might have had a career change or something, because I always enjoyed writing and, you know, writing plays, and, you know, I might have been different, but I don't know.
You can't say.
No, you can't. How can I?
Would you ever consider going back there?
Of course, yes. Yeah. That's my ambition.
Is that your dream, to go back?
It's not a dream. I don't dream it, you know. Yeah. It's in the affirmative. You know, I want to go back home.
Yeah.
You know, I want to take my daughters and my grandchildren and race along the beach. I want to pitch marbles with them. In my old age, I want to, because going back, we used to do some, I say naughty things, but we used to have some, we used to call them poor white folks, Mrs. Fenty. You've seen her, they've been on Wolverhampton on British TV before, Mrs. Fenty from down the hill. And as a girl, we used to throw rock stones on the roof and run off. And I remembered a couple of years ago, I went down the hill and I saw her. She says, "Your girl Maureen." She says, "You think I remember you?" She says, "You've gotten a bit big, but I remember you." She says, "I remember you to throw a rock stone at my house and run off." So I said to her, I says, "This is my daughter and my granddaughter." She says, "You brought them to throw rock stones at me again?" I says, "No, I haven't." You know, and those are things I enjoy going home. I enjoy picking fruits off the tree. You know, I enjoy calling the chicks in. I enjoy going from house to house and being malicious. When I say malicious with the women, you know, we sit and we talk about sex, you know, we talk about the men, we talk about fashion, we laugh as loud as we can. You know, things like those I enjoy, because over here I'm suppressed. You know, even in my language I'm suppressed. You know, when I want to speak my own lingo, I got to realize, well, you know, you've got white folks in here, I have to try and speaky spokey. That's why you see a lot of black people, you know, they try to speak spokey and they come out the wrong way. You know, if we're allowed to be ourselves, we'll be happier.
Yeah. And what changes have you seen in Wolverhampton since you arrived?
There have been quite a lot of changes, because you can go back to the marketplace. You know, it was where the civic centre was, and there's been a lot of new developments. You've had a lot more intermarriage, interracial relationships. You know, because when I first came here, you know, in the West Indies, when we walk as women, our bottoms rotate, you know, as women. And when I first came here, I saw white ladies walking and not a hint of a bottom. Honest, you know, those were curious to me, and I wonder what the hell is going on. My sister, oh, the way these girdles, you know, to keep the sounds in. You know, so now we see people a lot more loose in the dress, in the language. You know, you find black boys and white boys and Asian boys, they speak the same lingo. You know, the music and everything. Everything is, you know, we have changed. We have, you know, black people have really changed. Wolverhampton, black, Asian and ethnic people have really changed the structure and the culture of Wolverhampton.
Okay, that's it really. Is there anything else that you wanted to say?
Don't know. No. For the future, you know, and now you go to meetings, you hear these people talking about futuristics, you know, and I would really like to know, okay, we're talking all about globalism. We're talking about, you know, European links and what have you, but what I'm saying for the future, what is the future of the children born here to interracial couples? What is the future of black children born here who've been brought up in the English society, brought up to be taught to be British? Will we be treated exactly the same as they treated us? Because coming from the West Indies or from Barbados here, we came here as British citizens. We were never accepted as British citizens. They accepted as a black person who have invaded their country. What is the future of our black children who are here?